Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo 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 Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tojayam Udirayat.
Tojayam Udirayat.
Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu.
Nastarajeshu Bhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttaman Shloke.
Bhagavati Mahashloke.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki.
Before reciting, we can say this together. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our favorite means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of God and Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and Srila Prabhupada, the translator and commentator. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering service unto the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. Godhead restrains. So let's just go through the English translations of the verses, and then we'll chant 24 when we get there. Okay, so Om Ahinatimidandasya Janandana Salakaya Chakshutun Jena Tasmai Shri I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master very kindly forced open my eyes. The torchlight of knowledge, that's really loud. Therefore I beg for service for him, from him, life after life, from him and to him. Hare Krishna. So text 1, or this 11th canto contains 23 chapters, this section, 23 chapters of where the Lord is instructing Uddhava. It's also known as, obviously, you've probably heard the term a million times, Uddhava Gita. And also, and understandingly, since it's even longer than the instructions that the Lord gave to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, on 18 chapters there. So there's much more detailed information on the process of executing devotional service. So, but now another thing just to keep in mind when you're reading this section, or all the sections of the 11th canto, or the whole Bhagavatam. In the second canto of the Bhagavatam, in the 10th chapter, first verse in the 10th chapter of the second canto, talks about the sections, the topical sections of Srimad Bhagavatam, and it lists that there are 10 topics. Creation by the Lord, creation by Brahma, etc., etc. The Manus, and so many things, so many topics of the Bhagavatam. But the 10th topic of the Bhagavatam is called Ashraya. Ashraya means the shelter. In other words, Krishna and devotional service is the shelter of all living entities. And the Bhagavatam sets out to prove or instruct us or enlighten us on how there's no other shelter. There's no other complete shelter, completely perfect shelter than Sri Krishna. And that is what we're coming up to in these series of 24 verses. So, Srila Jiva Goswami, he explains that actually Srimad Bhagavatam only has one topic, and that is Krishna Bhagavan, the Ashraya. But it gives us all these other information so that we realize, oh yeah, fruit of, speculation is not the complete happiness. It's not going to bring you to the ultimate goal. Okay, so just keep that in the back of your mind while we go through these verses. So, but Krishna's shelter and Krishna's service, that's the ultimate satisfaction for all living entities, right? In the first 3 verses to the Bhagavatam explains that What's the highest good for all living entities? Not just some, not just a group, this group, that group, the big. Every living entity gets benefited by performing devotional service to the Supreme Lord. And the more consciously and the more advanced they are and the more elevated they are in that process of devotional service, the more and more they'll feel satisfied across the board, without a doubt. Okay, that's the introduction. Hare Krishna. Okay, want to go around the room? Would you like to start? Kunja Bihari Ji, Jas, Devi Dasi.
Sri Uddhava said, "My dear Krishna, the learned sages who explain Vedic literature recommend various processes for perfecting one's life. Considering these varieties of viewpoint, my Lord, please tell me whether all these processes are equally important or whether one of them is supreme."
So what do you think about that statement of Uddhava? That's my opinion too. It's a good question. It's a good question. Are they all the same? There's all different varieties. Krishna's the source of everything. He's the source. That's going to come up in this section too. There's so many varieties of living entities, and there's so many different recommendations. Are they all the same? Are they all the same benefit? Let's tune in and see what. Would you like to continue?
My dear Lord, you have clearly explained the process of unalloyed devotional service, by which a devotee removes all material association from his life, enabling him to fix his mind on you.
Over here. Let's go this way.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "By the influence of time, the transcendental sound of Vedic knowledge was lost at the time of annihilation. Therefore, when the subsequent creation took place, I spoke the Vedic knowledge to Brahma, because I myself am the religious principles enunciated in the Vedas."
Time. So what do we know about time that Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita? Go ahead.
Destroys everything.
Destroys everything. And what else? That's it. Krishna is time. That's Krishna's representation also right there, the time factor. Interesting when you think of it in that term. And it's destroying everything, at least in the material world, right? And then another thing we learned from Sri Brahmaji, Brahma Samhita, that there's no time in the spiritual world. It's not destroyed like that. The time factor is for the destroying nature of time is a characteristic of the material world. And time is present in the spiritual world in the sense of the sun rises and there's morning things they do in the morning and things they do in the afternoon and evening, etc., etc. But it doesn't take away from their energy or their eternal life. It's a whole different concept. Okay, continue, please.
Lord Brahma spoke this Vedic knowledge to his eldest son, Manu, and the 7 great sages headed by Bhrigu Muni then accepted the same knowledge from Manu.
What's being described there?
Parampara.
Parampara, disciplic succession. It become knowledge, perfect knowledge is handed down in a chain. Continue, Prabhupada Priya Prabhu.
From the forefathers headed by Bhrigu Muni and other sons of Brahma appeared many children and descendants who assumed different forms as demigods, demons, human beings, guhyakas, siddhas, gandharvas, vidyadharas, charanas, kindevas, kinnaras, nagas, kimpurushas, and so on. All of the many universal species, along with their respective leaders, appeared with different natures and desires generated from the 3 modes of material nature. Therefore, because of the different characteristics of the living entities within the universe, there are a great many Vedic rituals, mantras, and rewards.
You want to give us the essence of that verse in your own words, please?
There's something for everyone in the Vedas.
Yeah, and acknowledging that there's varieties of levels of consciousness and varieties of levels of desire. This purport is quite interesting. So can you click into the purport there? And I forgot the front row here. Would you like to read the purport?
If one is curious why Vedic literatures recommend so many different methods of worship and advancement, the answer is given here. Bhrigu, Marichi, Atri, Angira, Pulastya, Pulaha, and Kratu are the 7 great Brahmana sages and forefathers of this universe. The Kandavas are a race of human beings who are, like the demigods, completely free from fatigue, sweat, and body odor. Seeing them, one may thus ask, Kim Deva, are they demigods? Actually, they are human beings living on another planet within the universe. The Kinnaras are so called because they are Kinchin Nara, or a little like human beings. The Kinnaras have either a human head or a human body, but not both. Combined with a non-human form.
So that's the question. Kinnara, are they humans? They have sometimes a human head, or sometimes they have a human body. Are they humans or not? Kinnara. Go ahead.
The Kimpusuras are so called because they resemble human beings and thus prompt the question, Kim Purusha, are these human beings? Actually, they are a race of monkeys who are almost like human beings.
And that's where Kim Purusha, that's Hanuman, the race of monkeys, become. Continue, please.
Srila
Bhakti
Siddhanta Sarvate Thakura explains that this verse describes the varieties of forgetfulness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The different Vedic mantras and rituals are specially meant for different species of intelligent beings throughout the universe. But this proliferation of Vedic formulas indicates only a variety of material illusion and not a variety of ultimate purpose. The ultimate purpose of the many Vedic injunctions is one, to know and love the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord Himself, and they empathetically explaining this to Sri Uvada.
The Lord's emphatically, he's stressing this point. There's varieties of living entities. And why are there varieties of living entities? Just like everyone can say off the top of their head how many species of life there are. That's a lot. And why are there so many?
God loves variety.
He loves variety, and the living entities have a variety of desires. And so there's something for everybody. Amazing, isn't it? And yet we, in our bodily concept of life, whichever community we're born into, we're thinking this is the best, or whatever political affinity we have, we think that's the right one and everyone else is wrong, or whatever school we go to, we think that's the one and everyone else is stupid. And you know what I mean? We have these groups, and even our temple is better than everyone else's temple, or whatever, we have that conception, and that's comes in the way in all of our friendly relationships, because we're thinking up, lower, or higher, this, that. But now the point being here, Vedic or Krishna understands that basic diversity and has provided something, a means for everybody in all different stages of consciousness, something that they can somehow or other they can grab onto something and become elevated. So that's why, that's in Bhagavad Gita, in one of the chapters in Bhagavad Gita, I don't remember which one, second, in the beginning. Krishna's saying Prabhupada saying in the purport that I'm forgetting the point that I want to make. Variety. Oh, people sometimes, thank you, Lord. Sometimes people become angry, when they see there's so many different varieties of philosophy or religious beliefs, and everyone in that particular group is saying this is the best way, this is the only way, this is the right way. And they become disgusted with it all and think zero is the best way, or nothing, or atheism is the best way. And but that illusion is, that variety is there. This is the point that this verse is making. The variety is there is to facilitate everybody to make progress. And also in Bhagavad Gita, in the Kamakanda section, Krishna explains that there's different recommendations so that people can make a little progress here and there, but they should not stop at that particular level. You have to go further. You have to come to and this is what Uddhava is asking, you have to come to the highest level. So what's that process that's going to bring somebody to the highest perfection? Yes, Prabhu, question or comment?
Isn't healthy competition extremely useful?
It is. It even exists in the spiritual world also. The gopis are always thinking how they can better their service, but the envy isn't there. Competition is one thing, but envy and wanting to put someone else down or be lower, and envious of somebody who's quote unquote higher or doing a apparently better job, that's not there. They're grateful and happy if somebody surpasses them in service, or somebody, and surpassing them in service, what does that mean? Somebody pleases Krishna more. They're grateful for that. They rejoice in that. They praise that, and they try to emulate, and it inspires them to do it more. So yes, competition is good and diversity is good. It's a question of how we see it. And that's the point of these beginning verses. Diversity is there. It's not that we're all one. As you can see, we're not all one. We're all very different. And that diversity can be dovetailed for the Supreme Lord in varieties of service. Hare Krishna. Thanks for that question. I could go on, but we should go on. So let's go back to text 8, please. Thank you. And I don't remember. Is it your turn, Nishta? Thanks.
Thus, due to the great variety of desires and natures among human beings, there are many different theistic philosophies of life which are handed down through tradition, custom, and disciplic succession. There are other teachers who directly support atheistic viewpoints.
Variety. There's so much variety. Continue.
O best among men, the intelligence of human beings is bewildered by my illusory potency, and thus, according to their own activities and whims, they speak in innumerable ways about what is actually good for people.
Do you want to give me what impression you get from that sentence that you just read? About the illusory potency. There's influence by, I'll help you, okay? Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm thinking like people think something else is good for them other than Krishna.
Right, correct. And they can think that something else is good for them, and therefore it should be good for you too. Because it's good for me, it should be good for you. And therefore, if you're not doing what I'm doing, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what does Krishna say? Influenced by the illusory potency. Just things to remember, because we want to try to learn, we want to catch ourselves doing these things. That's why it's here. That's why it's written down, so that we catch ourselves and adjust our attitude and adjust ourselves and focus in on a proper attitude. Okay, thank you very kindly. Continue, please.
Some say that people will be happy by performing pious religious activities. Others say that happiness is attained through fame, sense gratification, truthfulness, self-control, peace, self-interest, political influence, opulence, renunciation, consumption, sacrifice, penance, charity, vows, regulated duties, or strict disciplinary regulation. Each process has its proponents.
You want to elaborate a little bit? Anything that might strike you from that you can extrapolate from that?
Yeah, it's, people maybe have experiences where they remember feeling happy from doing this activity, like they got fame and they felt happy for it, and then they think fame's the way to get happiness, and they project that onto everyone's experiences, and that's the way to do it, even though it's...
Okay, good, perfect. So there are, in other words, we have a general tendency to say that only devotional service is going to make you happy, and it's not a false statement. But what's being described here are different varieties of happiness. So what's wrong with being happy by getting fame? Can you answer that? Or would anyone like to answer that? What's wrong with being happy by getting fame? Yes, dear. You need to put it into the microphone. As an online listener, it's really agitating when people don't speak into the mic. Okay, go ahead.
So it's temporary. So
Exactly. But you can go on. Sorry.
it's temporary.
It's temporary. In other words, it's not that there's no happiness in many of these things. You know, it's not that there's nothing there that people get benefited by doing those things, by doing pious activities. There's happiness, but it's not lasting happiness. And what we're looking for ultimately, even knowingly or unknowingly, we're looking for ultimate happiness. Prabhupada Priya Prabhu?
There's a couple other problems with it.
Yes.
Happiness. One is that it leaves a residue. It makes one feel proud, or and the other thing is that it makes one attached to material life because you actually think that there's pleasure in it.
Yeah, correct. Totally correct. The downside is even if one is quote unquote in the mode of goodness, living a nice perfect mode of goodness life, the problem is that one gets attached to that and thinks, okay, I'm all set. And then they die. And then they have to get the results of their activities, good and bad. And the good results will give them another chance to quote unquote enjoy in the material world and what? Become entangled. Yes, Prabhu. Mike in the back, please, and thank you.
Yes, bouncing off of what Prabhupada Priya said, it's good that therefore material happiness is like having some delicious dip, but there's sand in it. So it's mixed and it's not pure. So
Right.
there's air of suffering in that happiness.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Let's continue on. We're on to 11, I believe. Yeah.
Also, persons I have just mentioned obtain temporary fruits from the material work. Indeed, some eager and miserable situations they achieve bring future unhappiness and are based on ignorance. Even while enjoying the fruits of their work, such persons are filled with lamentation.
See, if we just went on to the next verse, that Krishna answered all of our points that we just made. Thank you. Continuing on, however you pass the mic, thank you.
O learned Uddhava, those who fix their consciousness on me, giving up all material desires, share with me a happiness that cannot possibly be experienced by those engaged in sense gratification.
So it's easy to read that verse and not contemplate the deep significance of what it's meaning. It's easy to read any of it and not contemplate what it's meaning. But here Krishna is saying that by performing devotional service and pure devotional service, so anyway, that's something we're aspiring for, purity. But that happiness that one experiences is not like anything else you've experienced. So that's enticing, and it's also hard to grasp because we haven't experienced a happiness like that. But still, the promise of that type of happiness and the small experience that we've had, even in our beginning stages, the happiness that you feel from a nice kirtan, or the happiness that you feel when you are able, by Krishna's blessing, to chant your rounds with a tad of more attention than previously, a tad more love and attention than previously, or the happiness that you get by, hearing or reading about Krishna. We get a little glimpse of it. And how does Lord Chaitanya explain that happiness that's available? Ananda Buddhi Vardhanam. When the heart becomes completely cleansed, that happiness is unlimited. And unlimited means there's no limit. It means it's always increasing. If the if the Pacific Ocean was always increasing, specifically, that would be very problematic, but that ocean of devotional service is always increasing. That just reminded me of Lord Varaha. Sorry. But remember when Lord Varaha went to pick up the earth that had fallen into the bottom of the Garbhodak Ocean? He put his little foot, he put his hoof into the water and tested the limits of the ocean. Who remembers the next phrase after that? Do you remember? Although it was unlimited, he tested it out. Sorry, it just came. Anyway, the ocean of devotional service is, the happiness is unlimited, and that's the thing. In other words, that's why Srila Prabhupada, he's always pounding atheistic philosophy or materialistic philosophy or scientific advancement, or he's pounding it. Why? Because there's some happiness derived from those things, but it's in comparison to the happiness that the living entity is naturally having in a pure state. They're totally atheistic philosophy, scientific advancement, etc., are robbing, they're cheating the living entity out of that unlimited happiness of devotional service by diverting his attention or their attention into activities that are just going to bind them in the material world. Dharma projika kaitavo tra paramo nirmat saranam satam. Second verse, right? Next. Second verse of the Bhagavatam, that anything that cheats the living entity or distracts him or takes him away from the real happiness, the unlimited happiness that's there in the pure heart of the living entity, that's kicked out of the Bhagavatam. Although those processes are explained. Prabhupada Priya, yes.
The point you're making reminds me of one verse that Lord Rishabhadev speaks that kind of sums it up. Nayam deha deha bhajam miloke kashtan kamam arhate bhujamye. He says that that happiness derived from sense gratification, that's enjoyed by the hogs and dogs that eat stool. So the same pleasure that we get from eating, from sex, from sleeping, from, that the animals enjoy the same pleasure. It's not that they have less. They enjoy sometimes more than we do, often more than we do. He said, but human beings are meant for a higher level of pleasure. So now that you've taken the human form of life, then, do tapo divyam, divine austerities, and come to the transcendental platform, and then you can realize Brahma Sokyam Tvanantam, spiritual happiness, which is unlimited.
And that's thank you, very nice. And that's the kindness of the Lord. He's always poking, testing, dragging, reminding, and defeating everyone's plans for material progress by telling them this isn't going to bring you the real happiness. Spiritual happiness is going to, yes, Prabhu, another comment or question.
How is scientific advancements bad? Isn't it like saying a knife is bad because it depends on who uses the knife?
That's exactly true. You're right. And oftentimes we make statements. Yeah, it's bad. But the point is how is it utilized? That's the short answer. Yes, Prabhu. Another comment or question? Yeah, you can get the mic. Yes, correct.
The question is that as you're mentioning, the happiness is bound to increase. It's bound to enhance as we are practicing bhakti yoga. So we're reaching this eternal state of happiness. But we are living still in a state of Maya. We are surrounded by Maya, and and this world is not equipped for us to be staying in that eternal state of happiness. It drags us back. So how do we, when we're reaching there and we're experiencing it, how do we not be dragged by Maya and be able to also be here and experience that state?
Well,
continuously.
That's a very nice question that you could talk about for quite some time to get the whole scope of what you're saying. To try to say it succinctly, one of the reasons that we're not experiencing the ultimate happiness that's available in devotional service is still because of the impurities in our heart. It's our impurities. It's not necessarily the material world, it's our impurities. Because those personalities who are in the material world, quote unquote, who are present here and who are completely pure, they're not experiencing it like you and I are, or like me, the dualities of material existence, because they're seeing everything as Krishna, even the material world. It's Krishna's energy, so they're not affected. So the reason that we're not experiencing that is because of our impurities, and we need to keep progressing or keep trying or keep endeavoring in the path and can keep making progress. And though the influence of those modes of nature which come over us, ignorance, passion, and sometimes goodness, will become less and less by the progress that we make. That's a very short answer, but hopefully it satisfies you to some degree. Hare Krishna. Let's go on if that's possible. We're on 12? Yeah, 12. And I don't know where we are as far as microphone goes.
One who does not desire anything within this world, who has achieved peace by controlling his senses, whose consciousness is equal in all conditions, and whose mind is completely satisfied in me, finds only happiness wherever he goes.
And there's another part of your answer. There's the answer there. When a vision is equal, so we have to, we have all that, we have some of that information. Yeah, equal vision, equality of spirit, soul, and this and that. Krishna's in the heart of everyone, but, the practical application is a little bit lacking sometimes. Continue on. Lakshmi Radha Prabhu. Thank you.
One who has fixed his conscience on me desires neither the position or abode of Lord Brahma or Lord Indra, nor an empire on the earth, no sovereignty in the lower planetary system, nor the eightfold perfection of yoga, nor liberation from birth and death. Such a person desires me alone.
So, thank you very kindly. You did a great job. So here, so many different, very elevated positions are being described. The position of Brahma, Shiva, this one, lording over the whole planetary system, or this section or that, or eightfold mystic yoga. What to speak of? I want a good job. I want a nice wife. I want a nice husband. I wanted this comfortable situation. I want, lesser desires. Continue.
My dear Uddhava, neither Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Sankarshan, the goddess of fortune, nor indeed my own self are as dear to me as you are.
That's amazing, isn't it? There's nuances to that, but I'm going to skip over it if that's okay with you, because we're only on text 16 so far. Okay.
With the dust of my devotees' lotus feet, I desire to purify the material worlds which are situated within me. Thus I always follow the footsteps of my pure devotees, who are free from all personal desire, wrapped in thought of my pastimes, peaceful without any feelings of enmity, and of equal disposition everywhere.
What would you like to say about that?
Yeah, I just find it curious that he's saying that he always follows the footsteps of his pure devotees. We're always free from all personal. Is this so interesting? God saying,
isn't it?
He's going to follow the footsteps of his pure devotees.
Yeah, isn't it? Krishna's greatest. Well, the great devotees say Krishna's greatest quality is bhakta vatsal, that he loves his devotees. And now just contrast the information that we just got in this one little verse to some people's conception of God. A more, in this day and age, a more traditional concept of God. They think God is what? The judge. God is, looking down, making sure you're doing the right thing. But here it's a whole different concept. Yes, what would you like to add?
So with this verse, I'm just wondering what's so attractive in the devotee for the Divine Lord?
That's a really good question. And that's another one of the basic things of Srimad Bhagavatam, and that's the attractive feature of devotional service. It's called rasa, exchange of relationship, exchange of loving relationship. In other words, every single living entity, present and not present, and even the ones in a non-human form, they have a relationship, a loving, relationship with the Supreme Lord. And there's varieties. It's not that everyone is just a servant or everyone's this or that. There's varieties. There's primary and secondary relationships, details of the relationship. But that loving relationship that everyone has with the Lord, that's where the bliss is. That's where the pleasure is. That's where the unlimited pleasure comes from, when we're in our rightful position of serving the Lord. Now, there's examples that you might have heard already, and if you stick around long enough, you'll hear over and over and over again that the hand, right? The hand is very important. It's not the only part of my body, but it's a very important part of the body, which enables me to do so many things. As long as these little fingers are connected to the hand, it works really good. But if they, for whatever reason, are separated, then they're never going to be as happy as they were when they're connected nicely and functioning nicely. So similarly, the living entity, we have a natural position connected to the Lord, and therefore we function nicely in that connection with a service to the Lord. And when that's impaired in some ways or totally disconnected, then that whatever we're seeking is not going to bring about. So that happiness that Krishna is talking about there, or that it's not that Krishna forces us to love him. He wants us to love him as much as he loves us. It's just that we're thinking, I'm okay and God's okay and I'll be okay here and he'll be doing his thing there. But he wants everyone to love him, and he loves everyone that much. So it's that. He's looking for that relationship. He is, and we should be. And it would behoove us to do it, So that when what is he saying here? He says, I love my devotees so much, I just do whatever they want. More or less, I said that really quick, but you know what I mean, just to make the point, And therefore, when they love me that much that they're willing to do anything for me, then that's what makes our relationship unlimitedly blissful. Did I hit on anything that makes sense to you? Or do you have any other?
So I guess Krishna's like a lover boy, he swoons over, like he just wants the love. So he's he's going after it, like pursuing us, like following in our footsteps because of the love, like he really.
Yes, correct. And as everything in the Krishna consciousness movement, there's nuances to that. So he is the one who's searching after the love of his parts and parcels, but he's also detached. If we want to search for love and happiness in a different way, like here, then okay. But I'm just waiting for you to turn to me again. So again, that brings those verses in the Bhagavad Gita that you might have heard to a different light, where he says that there are two birds in the tree, or there are two souls in the body. One is the living entity, the jiva, and the other is the paramatma. So the jiva, comparing those two living entities to birds in a tree. One of the birds, the jiva, is, oh, look at that fruit, tastes good. Oh, no, that one's a little bitter. No, I'll try that one. Okay. He's trying to taste the fruits of his activities. This will make me happy. If I get a degree, that'll make me happy. If I have a nice job, that'll make me happy, or whatever, But until he turns around and says, and the other bird is just the witnessing bird, the Paramatma, the Supreme Lord, is just what he's waiting. He's just waiting for the living entity to turn to him and realize, I'm not going to be happy doing any of these things. I'm only going to be happy serving you. And that has varieties also. And Prabhupada Priya.
Just thinking that another way of understanding this verse is because Krishna is saying, with the dust of my devotees' lotus feet, I desire to purify the material worlds. So Krishna sends devotees here and like Srila Prabhupada, and to purify the material worlds. That he came, he introduced Krishna consciousness, chanting Hare Krishna all over the world. And then he says, thus I always follow the footsteps of my pure devotees. So I was thinking that he sends Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada gives the process, he gives the Mahamantra, he gets people to engage in bhakti, and then, so devotees meet Prabhupada, and then they get the process of bhakti, and then what follows is Krishna. You know, that through the devotees we get Krishna. So Krishna follows his devotees in that sense, that our first contact is with a devotee, and due to that connection, we get introduced to Krishna, and Krishna comes into our lives.
Very nice, thank you. Okay, we're going on. We're on 16 now? We're on 17. Okay, are we, yeah. Thank you.
Those who are out without any desire for personal gratification, whose minds are always attached to me, who are peaceful, without false ego, and merciful to all living entities, and whose consciousness is never affected by opportunities for sense gratification. Such persons enjoy in me a happiness that cannot be known or achieved by those lacking such detachment from the material world.
Knowledge of the spiritual world, detachment from the material world and other things. Continue.
My dear Uddhava, if my devotee has not fully conquered his senses, he may be harassed by material desires. But because of his unflinching devotion for me, he will not be defeated by sense gratification.
That's another little caveat to the answer to your question too. It's by our material desires that we get deviated. But whoever had such a process that whatever little progress you made is never lost, forget it. There's nothing like bhakti. Go ahead.
Dear Uddhava, just as a blazing fire turns firewood into ashes, similarly, devotion unto me completely burns to ashes sins committed by my devotees.
The sins and the reactions and the desire. Kunja Bihar, you want to take it up again, please? Thank you.
My dear Uddhava, the unalloyed devotional service rendered to me by my devotees brings me under their control. I cannot be thus controlled by those engaged in mystic yoga, Sankhya philosophy, pious work, Vedic study, austerity, or renunciation.
Can someone give me a few examples or an example of Krishna becoming under the control of his devotees off the top of your head? Nitai? Can you say it into the mic, oh best of the recorders?
Vamandev, like being controlled by Bali Maharaj, surrender.
Okay.
He became a storekeeper.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Thanks for putting that in. I forgot that part of the story. Okay, another example. Krishna being controlled by his devotees. Yes, Prabhu. In the back microphone. Thanks.
Sometimes Radharani is very angry at Krishna. She just chases him away, and then, like a dog with his tail between his legs, it just kind of scurries off and waits until she's more pacified.
He's totally controlled by love. How about some Mother Yasoda pastimes? Nishta, thanks for volunteering. Thanks. Sorry, I'm just including you.
Damodar pastime.
Yeah.
With Mother Yashoda chasing Krishna with the stick and him allowing her to bind him.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's so easy to, read the pastime and then just go on with your day, or even read the verses and go on, but try to imbibe them and bring them deep into your life and apply them, and you'll see that little bit of expansion of understanding. Okay, we're almost there. Thanks.
Only by practicing unalloyed devotional service with full faith in me can one obtain me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I am naturally dear to my devotees, who take me as the only goal of their loving service. By engaging in such pure devotional service, even the dog ears can purify themselves from the contamination of their low birth.
Any thing that strikes you about that verse?
It's like no matter who you are, what you do, how bad you are, Krishna is always there.
He's always there. Yeah, there's always hope.
Yeah, and he always loves you unconditionally, no matter what you're doing.
And anytime we have thoughts contrary to that, oh, I'm hopeless, oh, I'll never make it, oh, woe is me, whatever. I'm so bad, I'm not going to make any progress, or I can't make it. That's what's called illusion or Maya, the tricks of Maya, because Krishna's saying here, he's saying here, even if you're the lowest of the low, there's hope. And you'll come forward and make progress in devotional service. Okay, want to read the next verse, 22? But just again, the theme now, Krishna's coming, he stopped talking about sovereignty over the universes or positions of Brahma. Now he's emphasizing the process of bhakti yoga. Jai Shri Shri Gauri Jai Shri Jai. Okay, continue.
Neither religious activities endowed with honesty and mercy, nor knowledge obtained with great penance can completely purify one's consciousness if they are bereft of loving service to me.
If one's hairs do not stand on end, how can the heart melt? And if the heart does not melt, how can tears of love flow from the eyes? And if one does not cry in spiritual happiness, how can one render loving service to the Lord? And without such service, how can the consciousness be purified?
Amazing, these levels that Krishna's talking about, amazing, the progression that's there, that concentrated, one-pointed activity to please the Supreme Lord brings about all of these very advanced symptoms: hairs standing on end, heart melting, tears flowing from the eyes. And our verse, the end verse, which we're not going to chant, we're just going to read it. Thanks.
A devotee whose speech is sometimes choked up, whose heart melts, who cries continuously and sometimes laughs, who feels ashamed and cries out loudly and then dances. A devotee that's fixed in loving service to me purifies the entire universe.
So this is what's in store for you.
Gauranga.
Crying, chairs standing on the end.
Gauranga.
Your voice is choking up. This is what's in store. Just hang on into the process of devotional service. Hang on to the principles that are explained there. And even it seems like an impossible feat, or like saying it's a long shot is an understatement, but still it's possible by the mercy of the Lord. And who can't but love a person who's encouraging us like that? Who can't be attracted to that? Yeah, of course, there's answers to that, but there. Shall we try to read the prayer? Oh no, look at your prayers. Oh man. It's summer. Are you that much in the schedule? Can we, or you were okay? Did you say? Okay, we'll just try to read the purport. Whoever.
Vadgada refers to a highly emotional state in which the throat is choked up and one cannot express oneself. Vilaja indicates that a devotee sometimes feels embarrassment due to bodily functions and memories of past sinful activities. In this condition, a devotee loudly cries out the holy name of Krishna and sometimes dances in ecstasy. As stated here, such a devotee purifies the three worlds. By melting of the heart, one becomes very steady in spiritual life. Normally, one whose heart easily melts is thought to be unsteady. But because the Lord Krishna is the stable foundation of all existence, one whose heart melts in love of Krishna becomes more stable and cannot be disturbed by opposing arguments, bodily suffering, mental problems, supernatural disasters, or the interference of envious persons. Because such a devotee is fixed in loving service of the Lord, he becomes the very heart of the personality of Godhead.
Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Sri Uddhava Gita ki jai, Mahaprasadam ki jai. Mahaprasade Govinde Namo